morning we're davening at 6:10. Now for a quick Devar Torah. One of the issues that comes up in this week's Parsha, of course, is the issue of when a Jew becomes, now it's translated in Art Scroll as a bondsman, which is really a better translation of what an Eved Ivri is. A Jew does not become a slave to another Jew. There's a lot of laws concerning that. How a Jew gets into the situation, he owes money, he can't pay it back. The only way to pay it back is he has to sell himself. Or legally, if he stole, say a Jew stole property and then went and gambled it away, he doesn't have the money anymore, the owner has to be compensated for the stolen property. Because in Jewish thought, it's not enough that you just serve prison time, that you sit in prison and you don't owe anything. You owe that person. There is a connection. And you have to pay, that person has to be made whole again. So if you stole the person's cow, sold it for meat, and then went to the track and lost everything at the track, you're still obligated to make that person whole. So you now have to come up with the money somehow, and the court will say, look, if you can't come up with it, we'll sell you as a bondsman, and from the money of the sale, this person will be compensated. And then there are a lot of laws of how they are to be treated. And we have to remember that at the time of the Torah, really up until the 19th century, slaves were considered to be property. They were not considered to be on the same level as humans. There's a very important distinction there, that a slave owner didn't look at the slave, he didn't help the slave because he didn't give him medical care because the slave was entitled to it as a human. The slave got medical care because it was an investment by the owner, that he wants a slave to last as long as possible. So it might not be the best medical care, might not be the best food, but it'll be something. In Jewish law, the Torah comes along and begins to upset this apple cart. And what the Torah is basically doing is saying, okay, we have the issue of slavery. Slavery was prevalent throughout the world until the 19th century. Until the late 18th century, there was no country on earth that had banned slavery. It was only in the early 19th century that you began to that the anti-slavery movement really began to take power. Okay, and England was among the first countries to actually ban slavery in the 19th century. So what the Torah is basically doing is slowly getting people used to the idea that slavery is wrong. You can't do it all at once. They would reject it. So what the Torah does is say, okay, you want to own a slave? These are the rules. It's interesting to note, in pre-Christian England, 1/4 of the people were slaves. After a few hundred years, the number of slaves in England had gone down to maybe about 5%. So something happened when Christianity came to England. The same thing among Jews. Yeah, Jews owned slaves, but Jews were to be responsible for the slaves. They were not animals, they were not property, they were humans and had to be treated as such. One of the mitzvot is that when we have Chagim, the slave is supposed to celebrate with the master. If you mistreat your slave, he's not going to celebrate with you. He might celebrate at your death, but he won't celebrate with you. And the idea there is pointing out you have to treat the slave in such a way that when it comes to Chagim, they will celebrate with you. Something to think about, Kaddish Rabbanim.